for Oxfam?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we think adaptation is a key part of the deal that has to be struck. It's also the right thing to do. I mean, the people who are most affected by adaptation are the poorest people and the people least responsible for climate change. And they're the ones who are having to adapt now to drought, to flood. They're the people we work with. So for developing countries to accept a deal which requires them to go on a low carbon growth path, which means poverty reduction is going to be less for them, is obviously going to be extremely difficult. I think the only way that developing countries will accept the deal is if there is decent money for adaptation, and quite quickly, if there is decent money for tech transfer along with the tech transfer itself, and that there is, intellectual property rules don't make it difficult for developing countries to move on to a low carbon path now. Without all those things, plus the clear commitments on the targets of 80% by 2050, we would say 40% by 2020, because we think the upper end of the cuts are now necessary. Without those things, we think it's going to be very hard. 70% of the people who live in poverty are in agriculture. So they're the most affected people, and agriculture is obviously the most weather linked. So clearly we have to focus very much on how people in agriculture in poor countries adapt and how they're supported to adapt.
In one world, we're using ICTs in a big way, partly to avoid travel, to have virtual meetings rather than travel, yes, but also to see how, for example, mobile phones can help farmers get more information. Do you see a role for ICTs in this whole process?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think things that reduce the gap between farmers and information, access to market information, are fundamentally important.